It is a good reflection on Americans that they tend to be on the side of the underdog. But it is often hard to tell who is in fact the underdog, or why. Many years ago, there was a big, lumbering catcher named Ernie Lombardi, whose slowness of foot was legendary. Someone once said that not only was Ernie Lombardi the slowest man who ever played Major League Baseball, whoever was the second slowest was probably a lot faster runner than Ernie Lombardi. When Ernie Lombardi came to bat, infielders played back on the outfield grass. That gave them more range in getting to balls that Lombardi hit. They could snare line drives that would otherwise be base hits.
Bro, I don't even know what he's talking about, bro. He making all these baseball references. I ain't never watched a baseball game in my life. I did used to play t-ball when I was younger, but I'm more of a basketball fan, so I don't even know what he's talking about right now. I don't.
Ground balls they could easily throw to first base from the outfield grass and get the slow-moving Lombardi out. Despite all that, Ernie Lombardi had a lifetime batting average of .306 and even led the league in batting a couple of years.
Good?
But many people said that if Lombardi had had just average speed, he could have been a .400 hitter. One day, as a teenager sitting in the Polo Grounds, the stadium where the then New York Giants played, I was privileged to watch a historic event. Ernie Lombardi laid down a bunt.
I'm just confused. The video is called "Why They Keep Making Black People Look Like Losers," and this dude is making like 2-minute long baseball references. So I'm assuming he gonna be like, black people are like the Lombardis. Is this Lombardi? Whatever, a baseball or something. I don't know.
The crowd went wild. The play took forever, with Lombardi laboriously clumping down to first base, running as hard as he could, but still not very fast, while the third baseman made a long run in from left field to get to the bunt. We cheered ourselves hoarse, rooting for Big Ernie as he doggedly but slowly made his way down the first baseline. He barely beat the throw, which set off another explosion of cheers. We were not just cheering for a hometown player. We were rooting for Lombardi to get revenge on those who had taken advantage of him for so long. We were cheering for the underdog. But was Lombardi really an underdog? How many players end up their careers with a lifetime batting average over .300 or with 2 batting titles? Like most of us, Lombardi was handicapped in some ways and privileged in others.
What?
Many people would consider it a handicap.
So he's talking about African Americans being handicapped in some ways and privileged in others. How? How are we privileged in other ways? Like, is he saying our handicap is our privilege? I really don't get it, bro. I'm not even gonna hold you.
To be a black orphan born in the Jim Crow South during the Great Depression of the 1930s. But the home into which I was adopted had 4 adults, and I was the only child. Many years later, when I was a parent and asked one of the surviving members of that family how old I was when I started walking, she said, "Oh, Tommy, nobody knows when you could walk. Somebody was always carrying you." You can't.
Oh, so he's saying like since we're always being carried, we are being hindered in society. But then you have to assume that we're always being carried. I don't know if we're always being carried. I don't think so. I don't know.
Can't buy that. A leading historian of education has said that the New York City public schools were the best in the country during the 1940s. That was when I went to school there. You can't buy that either. Today, the classes are smaller, the buildings more modern, but the education itself is a disaster. I got the kind of education that people have to go to expensive private schools to get today. Perhaps more important, nobody told me that I couldn't make it because I was poor and black, or that I ought to hate white people today because of what some other white people did to my ancestors in some other time.
I've noticed that a little bit too in society. It's a lot more excuses today than there was in the past. I've said this in a previous video. Make sure y'all subscribe. That it feels like I can't even put a word on it. But every time you look around in today's modern society, it's like it's more excuses on why we can't succeed when now is probably the best time to succeed. I don't know if that hinders our community or not, but that's just what I've noticed.
Nobody sugarcoated the facts of racial discrimination, but Professor Sterling Brown of Harvard University, who wrote with eloquent bitterness about racism, nevertheless said to me when I prepared to transfer to Harvard, "Don't come back here and tell me you didn't make it 'cause white folks were mean." He burned my bridges behind me, the way they used to do with armies going into battle, so that they had no place to retreat to, and so had to fight to win.
So this guy, Thomas Sowell, he grew up in, I don't even know what years. He sounds kind of old though. He grew up in older times. He went to Harvard. He went to the white school, Harvard, and he actually succeeded there. One of the hardest schools in the country. And he's saying that in comparison to today, we have it easier because we have more excuses. Well, people are telling us more excuses, and because of that, we're succeeding less. I don't know if that's the reason we're succeeding less, but that does make sense. I mean, if you think about it, if you really think about it, when he was coming up, times were actually harder and relative to today. So his childhood would probably be harder than my childhood. But yet, like we become more sensitive to what other people think of us, what other people expect from us, and because of that, our expectations of ourselves lower completely. And that hasn't happened in my life because no one has ever told me I can't do something because of the color of my skin. But that's just what I've noticed in the news. Like, it'd be youngins talking about they can't do something because of their skin color, and that's just not true. So my solution to this is just, and this you probably don't agree, is just stop telling people, stop making it known negative things. Stop making negative things so known. We should start focusing on the positive in society. And the only reason I say this is not because the negatives don't exist. I say this because we will succeed more if we focus on the positive. Like, our race will be better off if we focus on things that are helping us rather than things that are hurting us.
One of the problems with trying to help underdogs, especially with government programs, is that they and everyone else start to think of them as underdogs, focusing on their problems rather than their opportunities. Thinking of themselves as underdogs can also dissipate their energies in resentment of others, rather than spending that energy making the most of their own possibilities. It must have been discouraging for Ernie Lombardi, especially in his early years, to be repeatedly thrown out at first base on balls that would have been base hits for anybody else. But he couldn't let himself dwell on that, not and win 2 batting titles.
That was good, man. That was really good. I didn't understand what he was getting at first when the video first started. Like, I thought he was just comparing us to some random baseball player. But yeah, that was good. If y'all have any more suggestions, comment them down below, and I'll see y'all in the next one.